Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Last week I was at a speaker development event. I'm part of this program where you learn how to build the business of speaking, you become a better speaker. And I was there with my coach, Anthony Trucks, and a bunch of people who are brave souls and are really pursuing the career of public speaking and have a strong message to share. But at this event, we all had the opportunity to get up on in front of the whole group with the lights and the cameras and Anthony sitting right in front of you and speak for 5 to 10 minutes on your topic and your message. And it has me thinking a lot about this idea of confidence, because public speaking is obviously one of the scariest things in the world for people. And to be in a community of people who are all choosing this and standing up in front of a room full of people with bright lights and a bunch of cameras filming you in front of a world-renowned speaker is one of the most nerve-wracking things that you could ever do. I have to tell you, I actually really love public speaking. It's something that I am pursuing more and more and more. But damn, that was one of the most nerve-wracking things that I've done in a really long time. And I was just really in awe of all of these people who are showing up in this space, choosing this thing that takes incredible confidence and ease to be able to show up in a space like that and just exude confidence. It's such a skill. Something that feels very elusive to people in general is this idea of confidence and how to have great self-confidence. What goes into it? Are you born with it? Is it something you can cultivate? There's so many questions, and this topic really does feel elusive to so many people. And I think one of the biggest requests when it comes to personal coaching is really to improve one's self-confidence. I mean, it's so important to people, and yet it feels very challenging and sort of vague about how to get there. And I think part of the reason that this is true is because there's so many sources of confidence for people. And it can look a lot of different ways depending on the person and their makeup and their lived experiences. So I want to deconstruct this a bit in this episode so we can have a better understanding of what confidence is and how we can build upon it. Just get a little bit more of a foundation for it. If we zoom out and we look at things from a cultural perspective, what are we often taught about confidence? We're taught that it comes from success, that it comes from having a lot of achievements, like degrees or promotions, or maybe hitting life milestones at the right time. We're taught that confidence comes from a certain amount of experience at the thing that we want to be confident with. We're also taught that we gain confidence through the support and acceptance and encouragement of other people. And the way that I would classify all of these things is they're the external sources of confidence. But consider this. You have a person who maybe doesn't have a lot of these things. They don't maybe have a lot of achievements or accolades outright, but they're incredibly confident. What's that all about? What allows some people to be so self-confident without all the external sources of confidence? And then what about this example? You have the person who has all the degrees, the credentials, the awards, the years of experience, the positive feedback from their peers, and yet they have incredibly low self-confidence. Like, what's going on there? And what it all comes down to is the way you think and the practices you keep. And in this episode specifically, I want to talk about the way in which you think, because this goes beyond doing personal affirmations and mantras and writing in gratitude journals. All those things are great, but this is way beyond that. This comes down to the way that you think at the level of your core beliefs. So what core beliefs might a very confident person have? Well, thankfully, this is actually pretty consistent across the board when it comes to research. So when we know about these core beliefs, we actually have a place to start to practice instilling them in ourselves. First core belief, and I love this one, is that confident people know their limits of control, meaning specifically, they know that they can't control outcomes in life. And this very much connects to what we talk about all the time, which is this idea of radical ownership. You own what is in your sphere. You can only control what is within you, including your feelings, your thoughts, your behaviors, your body, your breath, your voice. External outcomes are way beyond our control. And this illusion that we have any control over these things, it's a massive source of struggle for people. I mean, truly, it is what has people in struggle the majority of their lives. Confident people understand this idea. Next, confident people understand that life is an ongoing journey and success is a process, it's not a destination. They understand that failures or mistakes or setbacks or hardship, that's all part of the process too. And in fact, it's a necessary part of the process to be able to grow and improve. They really do reject the idea that they're a victim in their life. So they're more able to honor the struggle that we encounter in life, the inevitable struggle and challenge that we all experience. Another core belief that's related to that is confident people see challenge or struggle as an opportunity. And I love talking about this idea. It might be an opportunity to learn or grow or expand, but there is this basic level of understanding that the struggle is temporary and failure could be seen as not this huge mistake or shortcoming, but actually a great source of feedback that allows somebody to improve and grow and evolve. Next, confident people understand that self-doubt is also a part of the process. So they know that struggle is a part of the process. They also know that self-doubt is going to be there. And they know that having fear or anxiety about something, it's sort of par for the course. They often will see it as a sign that they're testing themselves and getting out of their comfort zone and growing rather than as a sign that they're failing or doing something wrong. I mean, so many people feel like, oh my God, I have all this self-doubt. And what I often say is like, great, you are doing something right. You are pushing the envelope. You're taking the guardrails off your brain. You're getting into uncharted territory. And they don't see it that way. Oftentimes people will think, no, I'm doing something wrong. I shouldn't be feeling this self-doubt. No way, man. Confident people know that this is part of the process. They also don't take failures personally, meaning they don't make the problems personal. They just understand, again, that this is all part of life. It's the inevitable part of life, that challenge and that pushback. And they also really, truly believe that they're going to succeed in the end, especially if they stick to it and they just keep working at it and they adapt and pivot along the way. So if you think of a person in your life who you feel is really confident, I mean, just take a second here and imagine who that person might be. Somebody in your sphere, maybe in your community, a mentor, maybe it's your spouse or, a good friend of yours. When we list out these core beliefs, can you see them in any of these? Can you see any of these in yourself? We are surrounded by people who really embrace and embody these core beliefs. And I think it's really interesting to be able to identify those people in our life. Okay, so now we know a bit more about the core beliefs of confident people, but what about the behaviors of confident people? What do they do? And you can imagine so many people have done very intense research on this. And what they find is there are some distinct differences between high confidence people and low confidence people. So let's go over a few so that we can see some distinctions here. First, confident people set lofty goals rather than small goals. And that makes sense, right? I mean, we see this in real time every single day. What I like about this is it very much connects to the idea that people have the ability to see possibility. Confident people, they see opportunity when other people only see what's right in front of them. They only can see their current circumstances. Confident people believe I have the ability to do what's necessary to get to my lofty goal. And they accept that this usually requires something like building a stronger network or maybe acquiring more resources or learning new skills. They have the expectation that's going to be part of the package. In contrast, low confidence people, they set smaller or safer goals. And we've seen this, but it's because they have a hard time seeing beyond what is right now. And they often take the safe bet because in the background, they fear they aren't capable of achieving those goals, like everything might fall apart. Another one is that high confidence people are committed to doing. They take action, they persist when things get hard. In contrast, low confidence people, they commit to trying. They say, I'm going to try to do this rather than I'm going to do this. And this is really similar to the discussion that we've had in previous episodes about deciding to do something versus hoping to do something. When you say that you're going to try something, it's very similar to hoping that it will work out. That's a very different energy than deciding that you're going to do something and then doing it. There's a big distinction here. Trying and hoping allows low confidence people to give up when things get hard. And we can hear this in their language. It might sound like, oh, it wasn't meant to be, or life got in the way, or I just don't have what it takes. You can very much hear this in the language of their life. Another behavior is confident people, they learn from their failures and they learn from their setbacks. They internalize success, meaning they take time to really integrate the wins. They look back and they say, oh, wow, look how far I've come. Look what I've accomplished here. I'm going to integrate these wins and make them a part of me, part of my DNA. And what this allows is it allows for them to upgrade their identity as a confident person. So they're continually supporting this idea that I am confident. It doesn't mean they don't have failures. They have many, just as many as any other person, but they have the perspective that they are going to learn from those failures and setbacks rather than be a victim to them. Whereas low confidence people, they personalize their failures. They make problems personal. And what I mean by that is they make the problems about themselves. So an example of this would be when somebody says, I'll never be able to do this. I don't have the skills. I'm not smart enough. I suck. Like whatever it might be. If somebody doesn't agree with them or a deal falls through or there's a conflict with a team member or an employee, they make it personal and it takes up their whole world. High confidence people have positive self-talk. This makes sense. They often talk themselves through the challenges, whereas low confidence people will often talk themselves out of things. So if there's a challenge, they're going to talk their way out of the situation and use it as a reason to let go or give up on the goal or the task. Low confidence people can have self-talk that's very critical or negative, whereas confident people, they expect that there will be challenges along the way. So they've developed this skill to be able to talk themselves through the challenge. Low confidence people, they have the perspective that when a challenge happens, it's the reason they shouldn't be pursuing the thing. And then finally, and this is kind of a fine distinction, but I think it's really important. High confidence people pursue success, whereas low confidence people avoid failure. And this might seem like a subtle difference, but the energy behind the action is very different. So pursuing success is about looking forward and persevering. And it's really leading with the desire and the intention of what they want. Whereas avoiding failure is more leading with fear. It often implies that you're on the defense or you're expecting something to go wrong. It speaks to this idea of scarcity or lack, and sort of like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And you see this often in people, especially business owners. You can see the leaders who lead with intention and desire versus leading with fear. It's pursuing success versus avoiding failure. Now, all these core beliefs and behaviors around confidence, they actually allow people to take powerful action in their life. So the more somebody practices, the more reps they put in on whatever it is that they're practicing, it leads to competence in whatever area they're practicing. And when you increase competence, it leads to increased confidence. So you get this positive feedback loop where both continue to grow. And that's something that's really fascinating to look at. And I'm sure you've experienced this in your life. You start practicing something, you get a little better at it, and then your confidence increases. and it makes you more willing to go out and practice more. And it's just this positive feedback loop. So we've gone in depth on some of these characteristics and core beliefs, but there's something really fundamental that I want to talk about regarding confidence. And as usual, when it comes to this kind of stuff, for me, it is about ownership. But I'm talking about a very specific type of ownership here, and that's owning your worth. I think true self-confidence takes a realization that you are worthy, like to really claim and own that. There's so many things in our world, in our culture, that encourage self-abandonment. When we give up who we are and what we truly need for a multitude of reasons, and it chips away at our confidence because it chips away at our sense of self-worth. I talk about this today because I want to encourage you to really look inside and ask yourself, do I feel worthy? Do I feel deserving in my life? And if the answer is no, that's a place to start. I truly think that strong self-confidence is built by believing that you are worthy and choosing to love yourself in times where so many other things might be screaming at you to self-sacrifice or self-abandon. From a practical standpoint, this might look like setting boundaries or removing yourself from relationships that are toxic or conflict-ridden. It might look like doing something different than everyone else or trusting your own instincts about what direction to go in your life. And I will never tell you that this is an easy path because I don't think that it's easy. I think it's actually the harder path because it goes against the grain of so many things. But I think it's the path to living a life of your own design and living a life that feels really fulfilled and really joyful. And when I look at the most confident people in my life, they have an incredibly strong sense of self-worth and self-love. And one more thing on this idea of self-abandonment. Oftentimes I see that people lack confidence because they don't keep their commitments to themselves. They say they're going to do something and then they don't follow through. And this has them feeling very out of integrity. I mean, they're letting themselves down essentially by failing to keep the promises that they've made to themselves. And this is, at the root of it, another act of self-abandonment. And oftentimes it has roots of feeling unworthy or undeserving. I think this is just another very important piece to building strong self-confidence. And keeping promises to yourself, following through, and doing what you say you're going to do is a huge part of this. I mean, even just consistently showing up late to things can be a way that you slowly chip away at your self-confidence because you're not honoring what you say you're going to do. Even the small little ways that they get out of integrity with themselves because they're not following through, it shows in their overall confidence. So, as always, I like to give some sort of an action at the end of a show because we know it's not enough to just have insights. We have to combine the insights with some sort of action so that we can get to transformation. So I think my question is, what sticks out to you from this conversation about core beliefs or behaviors or this idea of, being in integrity with yourself and following through? What resonated so that you can focus on something specific when it comes to building up more confidence in yourself? We are all continually working on our own growth and evolution. We're all working on cultivating a strong sense of self-confidence. It's a practice. There are definitely seasons of life where confidence can feel more grounded and strong versus other seasons of life. But in general, how do we stand in these core beliefs? How do we exhibit some of these behaviors and really honor our self-worth and claim that? So that's all for today. I hope this conversation spurred on some insights for you. If you have questions, if you have topics that you'd like to hear more about, send me a message. You can go to stephsaffer.com and do a little inquiry there. You can send me an email at steph@stephsaffer.com. I'd love to hear topics that you want to hear about on the show. This is our community, and the goal of this show is to just continue to be more impactful every single day. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here and working on your confidence and working on growth. And as always, thank you for being ready to impact. Thanks for listening to Impact Ready. I hope today's episode inspired you to own your impact and recognize that you are powerful. By elevating our energy and awareness, we can create exponential change in this life. If you enjoyed today's insights, share them with a friend and subscribe to the show for more. I truly appreciate you. Thanks again for being here.